In this video, we'll talk about working with Analytics Edge macros using the Task Pane. There are three ways to create a macro. The first way is by just starting a query. You'll be offered the choice between a quick query and a macro. If you select a macro name, you can either enter the name or just click OK. The cell reference will be used as the default name. As in this example, Sheet 1, cell A1 is used as the macro name. By running the query, you'll see that the function has been added to the task pane. And the intermediate results have been added to a temporary worksheet called step results that is showing the active table of data in memory. This is a sample of the data. It is not all of it, and it's highlighted in green to make it distinctive. You work with this intermediate data as you add additional functions, and eventually you write the results out to a worksheet. When writing the results to a worksheet, you have the choice to use the Write to Worksheet function, which has a lot of options in it, or you can just pick Write to Current Cell as a quick pick. The second way to create macros is to actually select New Macro from the drop-down in the task pane. You'll be offered the same choice to name the macro. Again, you can create a function, it'll automatically be added to the macro, and we can do a quick Write to Worksheet. If you want to run the macro, you can simply click the Run button in the task pane. A third way of creating a macro is actually to take an existing quick query, as I have on Sheet 7, and select the Convert to Macro function from the drop-down of the Edit Query button. This will convert the quick query itself and any intermediate functions as well as the Write to Worksheet into a macro that you can easily run. The quick query itself has been removed from the workbook so you don't end up doubling up on the query. Now that we have three macros in our workbook, if we want them to refresh in a particular order, they will actually refresh in alphabetical order based on the name of the macro. So the number 2 macro will actually run first. If we wanted Sheet 1A1 to run before number 2, then we can rename the macro. Here I'll just put a 1 in front of it. And now as you see, it's listed in alphabetical order, and that is the order that the macros will actually run when we click Refresh All. All three of our macros have run. If we want to create a macro that does not run when we click Refresh All, change the name to start with an underscore. When you refresh all, underscore macros are not executed. In order to edit any macro function, simply select the function and click the Edit button. The function will open and allow you to make any changes. In the task pane, you'll notice that the function itself, the GA reports function, has executed. It's turned green, and the highlight of light yellow is pointing at the Write to Worksheet. That's the next function to be executed. You can execute that function by clicking the Step button in the task pane to execute the next function in the list. As an example, we change to another macro, and we can step through that macro, and you can see the intermediate results between each of them. When you hit the end of a macro, a little note will pop up, and then it will start again at the beginning. As you step through macros, you can stop executing it and clear the current pointer. To edit a macro function, you have the ability to select any functions and move them up or down in the list, executing in a different order. Notice that when you do this, some of the functions may not work, and you might have an error. The errors will appear in the top of the task pane in a red highlight, and you can hover over it to see a little bit more detail, or click on it to actually pop open a dialog box. You can also expand the size of the task pane if you want to see a little bit more. If you've made a change by mistake, there is an undo capability, and you can undo several steps since the beginning of your session with Excel, or redo those steps for that particular macro. You can also copy selected functions and paste them after the insertion point. You can also delete the selected function. Note that you can copy or paste functions between macros as well. So that if you want to add to an existing macro, just run it to the end and then start with the next query or next function that you want to run. You notice that the GA reports function has been added to the end of the existing macro. You can run as many queries as you want in an individual macro, and you can use all of the functions of the core add-in to modify your results before you write them into Excel. Another way that you can run macros, if you want to run selected macros, say if you only wanted to run 2 specific macros, is to select them in the Refresh Selected Macros dialog. That's how easy it is to create and edit macros using the Analytics Edge task pane.